Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. In the ancient days, before the rise of kingdoms and men, dragons ruled the sky. These majestic creatures wielded a power unmatched by any other, but their reign was not one of peace. Among the dragons, Xal'Rath, the most fearsome of them all, sought not just dominance over his kin, but the complete subjugation of the world beneath. His hunger for control burned like the fires within his belly. The people, led by a coalition of mages, warriors, and other dragons, eventually waged war against him. It was a war of devastating consequences. The land was scorched, the seas boiled, and the heavens trembled. In the end, Xal'Rath was defeated, his essence trapped within 7 gemstones, each representing a fragment of his soul. The gems were scattered across the world, hidden in places no mortal could find.
Until now.
Mia stood in the middle of the dusty library, the smell of ancient parchment filling her senses. The words on the crumbling scroll in front of her were faded, nearly illegible, but she had spent her entire life studying the arcane languages of the old world. Her eyes darted over the unfamiliar symbols, piecing together their meaning. The first one is hidden in the caverns of Eldros, she muttered under her breath. Mia, a young and gifted mage, felt a weight pressing on her heart. She had always known there was darkness lurking in the world, but to think that the Order of Xal'Rath, long thought to be a myth, was real, and that they sought to reunite the gemstones, chilled her to the bone. If they succeeded, the evil dragon could be resurrected, plunging the world into another age of fire and destruction. She couldn't let that happen. The flickering candlelight cast shadows across the walls as Mia rolled up the scroll, her fingers trembling. She knew she couldn't do this alone. She needed someone who knew the world beyond the walls of Valoria, someone who could navigate the dangerous terrain where the first gem was hidden. She needed Jack. Jack was the kind of man who could slip through the cracks of society. A thief by trade, his charm and quick wit often kept him out of trouble, though not always. For Jack, the allure of ancient treasures had always been too tempting, and though he operated on the fringes of the law, he had a code of his own. When Mia found him, he was seated at the corner of a tavern, flipping a coin between his fingers. His sharp eyes flicked toward her as she approached, sizing her up immediately. He recognized her. Mia was known in Valoria for her talents in magic and her unrelenting quest for knowledge. She was not the type to frequent taverns like this. Looking for someone? Jack Seeley's voice was casual, his grin playful. He did trust easily, but he wasn't about to turn down what looked like an opportunity. Mia sat across from him, her posture stiff, her gaze unwavering. I need your help. Jack raised an eyebrow. My help for what? Exactly. There's something ancient and dangerous hidden in the caverns of Eldros, she said, lowering her voice, something the Order of Xal'Rath is after. The playful grin vanished from Jack's face, replaced by a look of mild alarm. The Order of Xal'Rath was not something people spoke of lightly. He had heard rumors of the group whispers about their dark magic and their desire to awaken an ancient evil. Jack leaned in slightly. Why should I help you? What solace in it? For me. Mia hesitated for a moment before pulling a small pouch from her robe and placing it on the table. The sound of clinking gold made Jack's eyes light up, but that wasn't her at all. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a shining amulet etched with symbols Jack didn't recognize. This amulet was made by the elves of Elandra. It's worth more than all the gold in Valoria. Mia said softly, help me retrieve the gem and it's yours. Jack's eyes lingered on the amulet for a long moment. He could sense the power within it, and for a thief like him, that kind of treasure was irresistible. He nodded slowly. All right, I am in, but I am not doing this for any noble, because you keep your world saving to yourself. Mia didn't smile. She knew Jack's motivations were less than pure, but she also knew she needed him. Together, they set off toward the caverns of Eldros, the first of many challenges in their quest to stop the resurrection of Xal'Rath. The journey to the caverns was arduous, the landscape turning more treacherous the closer they got. The sky seemed to darken with every step, the trees becoming twisted and gnarled, as though nature itself had been corrupted by the dragon's lingering influence. Jack led the way, navigating through narrow mountain passes and over crumbling bridges with the ease of someone who had lived a life on the edge. Mia followed close behind, her staff glowing faintly in the gloom, her eyes constantly scanning the horizon for danger. As they approached the entrance to the caverns, Mia paused, her breath catching in her throat. The ground beneath them seemed to hum with a dark energy, and the air was thick with the scent of sulfur. The entrance loomed before them, a gaping maw in the side of the mountain lined with jagged rocks, like the teeth of some monstrous creature. "We were here," Jack said, glancing back at Mia. "Are you sure about that?" Mia nodded, though she could feel her heart pounding in her chest. She had spent years preparing for this, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of what lay ahead. Together, they stepped into the darkness. The caverns of Eldros were a labyrinth of tunnels, some so narrow they had to squeeze through sideways, others vast and echoing, their ceilings lost in shadow. Strange, glowing mushrooms lined the walls, casting an eerie light that flickered as if alive. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the air became, as though the very walls were pressing in on them. Mia could feel the gemstone's presence, a faint pulse of magic that grew stronger with every step. But they were not alone. The Order of Zalrath had sent their own forces to retrieve the gem, and as Mia and Jack ventured deeper into the caverns, they began to encounter signs of their presence. Footprints in the dust, the faint echo of voices in the distance, the flicker of torchlight just around the corner. "We're getting close," Mia whispered, her grip tightening on her staff. Jack nodded, his hand resting on the hilt of the dagger at his waist. His usual light-hearted demeanor was gone, replaced by a grim determination. They moved silently through the caverns, their footsteps barely making a sound on the stone floor. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with the enemy. A group of 5 cloaked figures stood in their path, their faces hidden beneath dark hoods, their eyes glowing faintly with the unnatural light of the Order's magic. "Well, this just got interesting," Jack muttered. Without warning, the figures lunged at them, their hands crackling with dark energy. Mia reacted instinctively, raising her staff and casting a protective barrier around them. The first blast of magic slammed into the barrier, sending sparks flying, but it held. Jack darted forward, his movements quick and fluid, slipping past the barrier to engage the nearest enemy. Mia's magic surged through her, and with a flick of her wrist, she sent a bolt of lightning arcing toward one of the cloaked figures. The figure crumpled to the ground, smoke rising from their robes, but there were more of them, and they were closing in fast. Jack moved like a shadow, his dagger flashing in the dim light as he took down another enemy. He was faster than Mia had expected, his movements precise and lethal. For a moment, she almost forgot that he was a thief and not a trained warrior. The remaining figures circled them, their eyes glowing brighter as they prepared for another attack. Mia's heart raced, her breath coming in short gasps as she struggled to maintain the barrier. She could feel the weight of the gemstone stalwart pulling at her, urging her to move forward, to reach it before it was too late. With a final surge of magic, Mia shattered the barrier, sending a shockwave through the cavern that knocked the remaining enemies off their feet. Jack seized the moment, charging forward and slashing at the nearest figure, his dagger cutting through the dark fabric like butter. The cavern fell silent. The Order's forces lay motionless on the ground, their bodies twisted and broken. Mia and Jack stood in the center of the chaos, their chests heaving as they caught their breath. "We need to move," Jack said, wiping his dagger clean on one of the fallen cloaks. They wanted to be the last. Mia nodded, her eyes scanning the cavern for any sign of the gemstone. She could feel it, a faint pulsing energy that seemed to call out to her. She moved toward the far wall of the cavern, her staff glowing brighter with each step. Jack followed closely behind Mia, his eyes darting between the fallen bodies and the shadows stretching along the cavern wall. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, hunted, even. Every instinct he had screamed for him to leave, to grab whatever treasure he could and run, but he knew he couldn't abandon this quest. The stakes were too high, and Mia's determination was starting to rub off on him. Mia reached the far end of the cavern and knelt beside a jagged rock formation. Her hands trembled slightly as she brushed away dirt and debris, revealing a small indentation in the stone. The pulsing energy she had felt all along was almost overwhelming now, as if the gemstone was responding to her presence. She whispered a few ancient words under her breath, and with a soft hum, the stone began to shift. Jack stepped forward, eyes wide as the rock split apart, revealing a gleaming gemstone the size of his fist. It shimmered with a deep crimson glow, the light casting strange reflections on the cavern wall. "That's Emmett," Jack asked, his voice barely a whisper. "That little thing holds the power of a dragon." Mia nodded, her gaze fixed on the gemstone. She reached out, her fingers hovering just above its surface. The warmth of its magic coursed through her hand, but as soon as she touched it, a sharp pain shot through her arm. She gasped, pulling her hand back. Jack stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. What's wrong? It's scented, it's reacting to me, Mia said, her voice shaking slightly, the magic inside alive. Before she could say anything more, the ground beneath them began to rumble. Jack swore under his breath, grabbing Mia by the arm and pulling her away from the gemstone. We've got to get out of here, he shouted, dragging her toward the entrance. Mia stumbled after him, her eyes darting back to the gemstone. It was glowing brighter now, almost as if it was feeding off the chaos around them. She could feel its power calling to her, urging her to take it, but something inside her warned against it. They barely made it to the cavern, mouthed before a deafening crack echoed behind them. Mia turned just in time to see the ceiling collapse, burying the gemstone beneath a mountain of rubble. She felt a pang of guilt, knowing that they had left the first piece of the puzzle behind. But there was no time for regret. They had to move forward and fast. Outside, the world seemed to be holding its breath. The sky was dark, the trees still, and the only sound was their labored breathing. Jack released Mia's arm and looked back toward the cavern, his jaw clenched. Well, that went well, he muttered sarcastically. Mia shot him a look. We didn't come here just to collect a gem, Jack. We came to stop the order, and now they know we were after the same thing. Jack ran a hand through his hair, glancing around the area. So what now? We've got nothing to show for this, and the order is still out there. Mia reached into her satchel and pulled out a worn leather-bound book. She flipped through the pages until she found what she was looking for. There's another gemstone, she said, pointing to a faded map. In the ruins of Eris, we need to get there before the order does. Jack stared at the map for a long moment, his eyes narrowing. You do realize the ruins of Eris are crawling with all kinds of nasties, right? The kind of things that eat people like us for breakfast. Mia gave him a determined look. I've dealt with worse. Jack sighed, shaking his head. Of course you have. The journey to the ruins of Eris was long and grueling. They traveled through dense forests, over rocky mountains, and across barren wasteland. Along the way, they were constantly on guard, knowing that the order could strike at any moment. But there was something else that weighed heavily on both of them. A growing sense of unease, as if the very world around them was shifting, responding to the power of the gemstone. As they neared the ruins, the air grew colder, and a thick mist rolled in, obscuring their path. The once grand city of Eris, now nothing more than a crumbling shell, loomed before them, its tall spires reaching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. The streets were silent, the buildings long abandoned, and a strange oppressive energy hung in the air. Mia stopped at the entrance to the ruins, her eyes scanning the area. We need to be careful, she said quietly. There's something here, something powerful. Jack unsheathed his dagger, his muscles tense. You were not getting any argument from me. They moved cautiously through the city, their footsteps echoing in the empty street. The ruins were eerily quiet, the only sound the occasional drip of water from the decaying building. Mia kept her staff at the ready, her senses attuned to any sign of danger. As they reached the heart of the city, Mia felt the familiar pull of the gemstone. It was faint, but it was there, hidden deep within the ruin. She motioned for Jack to follow her as she led them toward a large crumbling temple at the center of the city. Inside the temple was even more foreboding than the city outside. Massive stone pillars lined the walls, their surface etched with ancient ruin. The floor was cracked and uneven, and a faint pulsing glow emanated from the far end of the room. There, Mia whispered, pointing toward a pedestal at the back of the temple. The second gemstone sat atop it, glowing softly in the dim light. Jack's eyes widened. Well, that was easier than I expected. As soon as the words left his mouth, a loud crash echoed through the temple, followed by the sound of footsteps, heavy armored footsteps. Mia and Jack spun around just in time to see a group of dark-cloaked figures entering the temple, their eyes glowing with the unmistakable magic of the order. Speak of the devil, Jack muttered, tightening his grip on his dagger. The leader of the group, a tall figure with a silver mask, stepped forward. His voice was cold, emotionless. You should not have come here. Mia raised her staff, the air around her crackling with energy. We were not leaving without the gemstone. The silver-masked figure tilted his head slightly, as if amused. You cannot stop what is already in motion. Zalrath will rise again, and there is nothing you or your little thief can do about it. Jack bristled at the insult but said nothing. He could feel the tension in the air, the magic building around them like a storm about to break. Without warning, the cloaked figures lunged at them, their hands crackling with dark magic. Mia reacted quickly, casting a shield around herself and Jack as the first blast of magic hit. The air sizzled as the two forces collided, sending sparks flying. Jack darted forward, slipping past the shield to engage the nearest enemy. His movements were quick and precise, his dagger finding its mark with deadly accuracy. But there were too many of them, and he was quickly overwhelmed. Mia gritted her teeth, her hands glowing with arcane power as she unleashed a bolt of lightning at the nearest figure. The blasts knocked the enemy off their feet, but the others pressed in, their dark magic growing stronger by the second. Just when it seemed like they would be overwhelmed, a loud roar echoed through the temple, shaking the very wall. Mia and Jack froze, their eyes wide as a massive figure stepped out of the shadow. It was a man, but not just any man. His skin was a deep, metallic blue, and his eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. He wore armor that shimmered like dragon scales, and a massive sword hung at his side. The cloaked figures hesitated for a moment, their eyes narrowing in recognition. Thorn, the silver-masked leader, hissed, "You dare to interfere?" The man Thorn stepped forward, his expression grim. "I want to let you revive Zalrath." The tension in the room was palpable as the two sides faced off. Jack glanced at Mia, his brow furrowed. "Friend of yours?" Mia shook her head, her eyes never leaving Thorn number. "But he's set on our side." Thorn wasted no time. With a powerful swing of his sword, he cleaved through the nearest cloaked figure, sending them crashing into the wall. The others scattered, their dark magic faltering in the face of his onslaught. Maya seized the opportunity, casting a powerful spell that sent the remaining enemies flying backward. Jack followed suit, his dagger flashing as he took down the last of the cloaked figure. When the battle was over, the temple was silent once more. Thorn stood in the center of the room, his sword resting on his shoulder, his eyes locked on the pedestal. "You were after the gemstones too," Mia said, her voice cautious. Thorn nodded. "I am here to make sure they never fall into the wrong hand." Jack scoffed. "Well, you were a little late to the party, aren't you?" Thorn ignored the comment, his gaze shifting to the gemstone. "There's more at stake here than you realize. The Order isn't just trying to revive Zalrath, they were trying to unlock his full power." Mia frowned. "What do you mean?" Thorn's expression darkened. Zalrath wasn't just a dragon. He was something much worse.